Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and David and Zach. Did you guys get your Cad Bane and Padmes yet?
Oh, you're really going to get me going early. Yes, I did get my Cad Bane and Padme models. I guess just a quick caveat, I painted Padme up. I could not get her face to look good. After about 3 hours and too many layers, I just took the head off and said, I'll tackle this another day. Like legitimately cut the head off the model. And I said, I'll figure this out later.
So this guy flashes his headless Padme at us today as we're getting ready to do the show.
I'm just going to show up to the table with an Ichabod Padme and it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, Sleepy Hollow.
How about you guys?
I mean, you could take like a spare clone trooper helmet and, put it on there or something,
I thought about doing that, and maybe that's what the problem was. I haven't painted a face in a while. It's just been clone armor for the longest time. Or I had Cassian's face, which is like, shielded by his awesome beard. So I can be like, I can paint faces, but I really can't. It's just his beard. And yeah, this one I struggled real hard.
I mean, if you bought I bought two Sabines, like one to do with the gun and one to do with the Darksaber. You could just like put Sabine's head on there. I'm sure it'll probably. I don't know if it would fit or not, but
that's a good question. I don't know, but I do have an extra Sabine header too, actually, because I did the same thing, and I painted her with the helmet, and then never painted her without the helmet. So, I don't know how many times I say, yeah, I'm gonna buy two of these and only paint one. It happens way more than I should admit, but that's Legion for you.
Yeah, I mean they both have nimble. They're basically the same unit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. It's close enough. We'll talk about Padme at some point. Probably when we do GAR 101, Republic 101. Yeah, it's it's hot. It finally rained in like the last hour here, but
really, it did not rain here. I'm only like 15 miles from here.
There you go. Did you just hear that thunder just now?
No.
Oh, all right. I guess my mic isn't as sensitive as I thought. Yeah, it's actually raining here right now. So yeah, super needed it. Kids going crazy in the house with 100-degree weather outside. I have not got my Cad Bane yet. He's in the mail. Supposed to get here today. Thanks, Asmodee. But yeah,
you'll have to go hatless for another few days.
Yeah. I'll join Krabik's list of petitioners to get stuff on time. No, it's fine. It's I mean, they only just officially released on Friday, so I've got so much other stuff in my backlog anyway. I'm not like jonesing to get Cad Bane together. I told myself that I had to finish all of my B1s before I did any more characters or tanks. So
just so people know, I'm buying that expansion just for the hat.
It is so good. I have it in my hands here. It is a great model, but the hat really is like the best. I kind of wish I bought now. Someone said this to me afterwards. Actually, I think it was the person we're going to interview tonight, Josh. He said, why don't you buy a second Cad and put that hat on Padme and hide her face because you can't paint it anyways. And he wasn't wrong, but it's too late because I took it off the model.
Someone on Facebook beat you to the punch. Someone actually posted their conversions with Cad's hat on Padme, calling it Cadme.
I think Panama Padme, the new fashion line for Star Wars Legion models.
Panama Padme, there you go. They should just have a Cad Bane hat expansion that has like 6 hats on a sprue in it.
Right?
I would definitely buy it.
Yeah, I would 100% buy it and use it as like objective marker.
There you go. I mean, you could use them as Bane tokens, right?
Right. Exactly.
There you go. I'm surprised actually we haven't seen like Bane token Cad Bane hats yet.
They're coming.
I'm sure they are. All right, so there was some actual like preview articles, so we'll talk about those in a little bit. We're gonna talk to Josh Devera, aka Peregrine, about Turn 0, and then we're also going to talk about Turn 0 after that in our tactics section. But first, let's hit some real quick housekeeping. We really need a housekeeping drop.
The one drop that you remember to do is the drop that we don't actually have.
I know, right?
Like, I didn't even write it into the thing. All of the drops have parentheses around them, Kyle.
I know. In my brain, I just hear like Chris Farley just being like housekeeping, from Tommy Boy. Anyway, I got that movie reference right.
You know what? Tell you what, we'll record a drop. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut what you just did, and I'm gonna upload it as the drop for housekeeping.
My
That's
I
what's
like this plan.
my impression of Chris Farley saying housekeeping. All right.
Also,
Yeah,
nobody
that's
born after the year 1990 knows that reference anyway. So
Okay. I got to do the full line. We'll figure out how to do the full line. I don't have it in front of me. All right.
No, I'm gonna make this work. It's gonna be great.
All right. Perfect. Anyway, housekeeping. Gen Con. So a couple things. The FFG and flight report is on Thursday. We're going to do some kind of thing related to that, some kind of video also. More details on that forthcoming. So check that out. We have the Legion tournament on the interwebs on the TTS that weekend. Lists are due on the 28th of July. So keep that in mind. It's probably going to be TTO. More details on that soonish by Friday, right, David?
yes, by Friday we'll have some more information regarding being registered in the system that we're using for the event itself. When I say that, I mean the tournament software. If you have a ticket right now, you're in the event. Okay, so be not confused or afraid. If you have a ticket, you're in the event. I know there was some confusion about that and about what the other stuff we were using would be. There will be a message coming in your Gen Con in your Gen Con account through their messenger system with both a link to the tournament software that we'll be using and the link to the Discord server that we will be using for the event itself. So just please do keep your eyes peeled in your Gen Con system messages for that. It is on the way. And if you have a ticket, don't worry. We know you bought one and you're in the event. Okay. So just hold on. Information's on the way.
Yep. And we're going to have streams also throughout the weekend. Your guys' streams, Dashes and Yavin Base, and also the Fifth Trooper YouTube. And we're going to have lots of prize support, not just for the event itself, but also just for watching the streams, including some great prizes from Army Painter. They're one of the primary sponsors of our stream, and that sponsorship goes 100% towards prizes for people that are watching and also for those participating in the event. So even if you're not participating, you can get free stuff just for watching the stream. So check those out. I'm sure we'll plug that with more details next week. But did I miss anything on Gen Con?
No, I think we're caught up.
All right, let's hit the news.
Welcome to In the News.
See, that's a real drop.
Yeah.
And what's even funnier is we already discussed what I wrote down for In the News on the opener, which is actual
sort of.
stuff that came out.
Yeah.
And other stuff, but just funny.
Well, I know Mike was sick of me asking how you guys were doing, so I let in with the Cad Banes and Padme.
No, now he's started this new nervous thing where he just speeds through the opening as fast as possible so you can't actually hear what he's saying. It's a new thing every week. I don't know.
Well, anyway, Cad Bane and Padme were released on Friday, so that's exciting. I've seen plenty of painted pictures already. Both of these individuals. Our Duros peoples. Anyway.
It's like a speed run.
Yeah.
People don't take their time. They just like, oh, here it is. Oh, Facebook.
I genuinely don't understand how people paint their stuff so quickly.
Me too.
Like I've got stuff from 2 years ago that I've been like meaning to paint. Like I just finished my Scout Trooper strike teams today.
Yeah, I'm always amazed. I mean, some of these aren't all speed jobs either. Like I've seen some
No.
incredible pictures of both of them, just painted like exquisitely that people were posting on like Friday, and I'm sure that not all these people got random early like Europe orders or something like that.
Yeah, it's super impressive how fast some people can do it.
Some real dedication and some real skill, frankly.
Makes me
Yeah.
sad I can't do it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Anyway, my Cad Bane's gonna sit on my shelf for at least a few days, if not a few weeks, until I get these B1s done. But I'm excited. It's you know, I'm sure some people can play Real Legion right now, if they're playing in their houses and stuff. But you know, Godspeed to those people. Have fun with the new minis. And it looks like at the moment things are on track for ARCs and BXs in August. August 28th, is that the official date?
Yeah, I think so. Which ironically is the day that lists are due for. No, I'm pulling a goof here.
Oh no.
I don't know why I got dad brain today. I don't know why I keep on thinking August 28th. But anyways, yeah, August 28th, which is I am sitting here and I'm thinking of the Palpatine meme, ironic. And I'm sitting here thinking about Mike, how it's ironic that he just finished his Scout Troopers just in time for him to go buy ARC Troopers. So
Well, and I'm gonna have to too, right? At this point.
Yeah, you pre-ordered 3, I assume.
I have had bad experiences pre-ordering for Legion, so I don't do that.
Okay.
Because I have put in multiple pre-orders at multiple places and got stuff like 2 months after they actually released, and where I could have just like ordered them the day they released and got them sooner. So I've stopped pre-ordering things.
That was cool stuff, right?
It was a couple different places, but
Okay.
that was one of them. Yeah.
I've done local store, I've done Asmodee, and I've done Miniature Market, and I've never had any problems with any of those 3 as far as pre-orders are concerned. So
Yeah, I think I've still got to buy like vital assets and stuff, but it to me right now buying models is not like a super high priority because I haven't played a real game in
yeah,
a while.
it's so that you can get them. I mean, my goal is to have everything like fully painted the next time I play a real game. So that's why I'm still getting everything when it comes out, because it takes me forever to get that done. But
Yeah, that next real life tournament thing, whenever that happens, that's gonna sneak up on you. And then you're gonna be like,
Totally.
oh no, I didn't paint these things. I thought I would have more time than just be right back to where you started.
Oh, my Vader list will be ready. It's like 80% done. I just have to paint the Shore Troopers.
This fully based and detailed Vader army.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that's
It's gonna
impressive.
be great.
Yeah, I mean, my rebels are basically done, except for the new characters, Cassian and K2. So that won't be super hard if I have to if I need an emergency army situation for the next tournament. But yeah, I'm in trouble if I want to play droids at the next thing at the moment. Speaking of ARC Troopers, we've got an article for ARC Troopers, including a full preview. So there's lots of juicy tidbits in this preview. Gone sort of unnoticed is the fact that the unit card was actually previewed in high def. I think the previous one was pulled from like the maybe the Asmodee spread on their store website.
I think it might have been when they were showing the models off on one of their streams, but I could be wrong. It was fuzzy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident the original images came from Asmodee tossing them up on the site, and they shouldn't have.
Oh yeah, you're right. Never mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if they should or shouldn't have, but that's where they came from.
Well, let me put it this way: the images went up, and then they immediately came down.
Well, there you go.
Oopsies.
Yeah.
So anyway, it turns out the interpretations of those fuzzy values and stuff was correct. But in addition to the stuff we basically knew about already, which was, you know, the stats for the unit cards and then the DC-15X sniper rifle, there's also 2 special characters, Fives and Echo. Mike, since you're a resident degenerate Republic player, do you want to?
Whoa! I thought we all agreed that we
All
weren't gonna talk like that.
So I'm sorry. Just a Freudian slip.
Yeah, I'm gonna start calling you David.
Droidian.
So, Mike Zelenko, what do you have to say tonight?
So
F clones.
We should probably
Alright,
cut
so-
all that.
no,
we
it's
probably
fine.
should.
We can leave it in here.
We're going
You know, I think it's no secret clones are really good right now. But let's talk about these sweet new cards that are awesome. So, Echo and Fives. I would like to just point out, from a fundamental perspective, that these are, I think, the first like upgrade that we've had that is like a heavy weapon that can go in multiple units. I may be getting that wrong, but I don't think so.
Well, we previewed Dell and Gideon from way back,
That's
they
right.
are going to be physically out before Dell and Gideon. So half true, half untrue. How's that?
Yeah. So these upgrades can go in basically any arc strike team, any full arc squad, any phase 2 unit, or any phase 1 unit. So they're pretty versatile in like where you can put them. Basically, Echo is just like a super souped up DLT unit that has reliable and all the DLT keywords. And he's got a better DLT because it's 2 red dice instead of a red and a black.
DC 15. Right.
DC 15. You're
Yeah.
right. DLT. All these letters and numbers, they're so
I know.
similar. You know?
all the Star Wars weapon names are just like a bunch of. It's just alphanumeric soup, basically.
Yeah.
And then we'll just toss an X on at the end of it.
Yeah. Which is fine. I actually think of the two, Fives is more interesting. He's got the coordinate clone trooper keyword on him, which allows you to do some like really cool stuff with like take that clankers, right? So if you could hand out a third face up order token on your take that clankers turn, which I think is probably going to be the main reason to take Fives. So both of these guys have leaders and 2 wounds, and they're your heavy weapon. So in addition to being like just really good value generally, they make it so that your heavy weapon dies last and has an additional wound stable to it, which is awesome. So I think both of these cards are excellent. I think they will both see a lot of play.
So if you're taking these guys, are you taking them in arcs? Are you taking them in phase 1s or phase 2s? What's your preferences there?
I think they're better in core units than they are in the actual arc squads. The DC 15X really, because of how clones kind of work with like aim sharing and stuff, like the red die instead of the black die on Echo is not that big a deal. And being able to like load a 4th sniper into like a phase 2 squad, I think is a pretty big deal. And similarly, I think Fives, you kind of want Pierce in your arc squads. So I think slotting like Fives into like a phase 2 squad with offensive push is pretty good. It's notable that when you load Fives into either squad, they become Courage 3. Which is more than Rex. So if for whatever reason Rex dies, the Fives can kind of take over and make your army even more immune to panicking.
Yeah, that's neat. And if you make him the hostage unit and hostage that he'd be Courage 4.
Yeah.
He's just Palpatine.
You know what's funny is I typed that out the other day, but hearing you actually say it just made it even more like real, and it's just kind of crazy to think about. Competitiveness aside, I think my favorite part about this is that it opens such a great design space for the game. But having these lesser known characters that you can kind of throw across your army was pretty cool.
This seems like an evolution of essentially what was explored with Pathfinders and Death Troopers with POW and Biston and DTF-16, basically, who are all like sort of unique mini characters. But they're kind of taking it up a notch here with, we don't know exactly how this 2 health thing works, like rules wise, but they're more durable. And then also it seems like these are just more competitive choices than at least like POW and Biston and DTF-16 all were when those units initially rolled out. So I think we'll be seeing a lot of Echo and 5s, and I think that's a good thing.
I mean, my assumption is that if you wound them first, you'll probably have to put another wound on them. So I don't think you can game it where you can just like store a wound on them forever. But again, we don't know.
Well, the thing about that is they become the leader.
Oh, that's right. So
Even
actually, you
if
have to
they
wound them
die,
last. Yeah.
even if they were to like somehow like you're able to shoot them, like because they're the only model you can see, they would just replace something else once they die, right? So
Right.
because they become the unit leader. So these guys are just like really good. Like you have to kill the whole unit to kill the guy with Pierce, or lethal rather. Or you have to kill the whole unit to kill the guy with coordinate. I do think the design space here is awesome. There's a lot of named clones. Like I would love to have a clone army that I could take that like is each led by like a named ARC trooper from like the 501st or whatever. I think that would be super insanely cool. So this gives me some hope that we can do that kind of like a Band of Brothers, I don't know. It reminds me of my Space Wolves from 40K, where like I named them all, and they all were like, this is the Jarl, this is the guy in this squad that all the sergeants were like named because that's what you do when you play Space Wolves. Glory matters, and I feel like this kind of really plays into something like that.
I'm holding up hope for some kind of named BX droid, but I don't think that's a thing. Having watched the entire Clone Wars show, I can't think of any.
My name is Roger, and his name is also Roger.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Roger.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're probably playing the wrong faction if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's not why you play droids, right? That's the droids are not the heroes in the Clone Wars show.
I don't know. It depends on who you ask, but sure.
Yeah, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But so super exciting. I guess this means at some point we'll be getting a BX preview article also shortly, and we don't know.
I would think.
There's a lot we don't know about them too still, despite the fact that they're being played around with. Any other thoughts on these two?
Hopefully I can paint their faces so I don't rip them off the model. But I guess if I'm buying 3 boxes, I have 3 options, right? And they're clone faces, so if I mess up those, I can just continually, pop them back on.
I mean, the good news is I'm sure that they come with helmets because they're clones.
Yeah.
But they're distinctive. I think I might have to. I did all my clones with helmets, but I think 5s and Echo might go helmetless. We'll see.
Yeah, don't they have facial tattoos?
5s does, I think.
5 does, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes them plenty distinct.
I just like the idea of a clone trooper walking into battle without a helmet on seems really silly to me. Like, don't get me wrong, I get the aesthetic; it looks kind of cool. I'm not gonna like judge you for modeling your stuff like that, but like, you have battle armor on. Of course, you're gonna wear you in like. I'm sure in these like clone trooper and stormtrooper helmets, there's like a heads up display that provides you with tactical information, and like the helmet is an important part of the ensemble for a variety of reasons. Mainly, it keeps you alive, but
Well, and this is like a miniature gaming staple, right? The stereotype of the Space Marine captain running around without his helmet on. Like,
yeah, totally.
Does he even have like a comms unit in there that he can talk to his battle brothers with and give out commands and stuff?
I mean, it's probably in like the neck or like in some other part of the suit. But
yeah, I mean, but like you risk getting shot in the face.
Yeah.
You've got an entire suit of power armor, and then your head is just totally out there.
I mean, I think it's at least as forgivable as fictional characters who only own one outfit, so you know who they are the instant you see them.
Yeah, It's just,
That's at least
like
as forgivable.
Space Marine Terminator with his face hanging out there. Just,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he's got a force field around just his face or something. I don't know.
Yeah. My guys will have helmets because I hate painting faces. So
Well, now after these jokes, I feel like I have to kind of model him with a hollow screen, and that's how he's coordinating to the other clones. He's not saying it through the helmet, but he's taking the time on the battlefield to bring up the hollow puck and be like, "Guys, I'm sending you an order."
I mean, it is only range 1. He could just be yelling at them.
Listen, Kyle, I don't want your logic.
That's literally, well, I guess that's what Echo does in the show, right? Like he's the one that repeats all the orders.
Yeah.
Feels like a wasted opportunity.
He's got all the
Anyway.
other. Let's give him coordinate too.
Yeah, right. All right.
Well,
Anyway.
let's just jam a 5th keyword on there. Why not?
Yeah.
I think there's already 5 keywords on there.
Okay, sorry. Excuse me, 6th keyword.
Yeah, there are
right.
in fact 5
Reliable,
keywords.
critical, lethal, immune deflect, leader. Yeah, that's 5.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
Just in case you wanted some more keyword with your keywords.
Yeah. All right. Let's
And
move
at
on to
least
this
it's 40 points.
How about we move on to this Legion 101 tactics section?
Get ready for advanced tactics.
So we're going to do this tactics section in 2 subsections. First, we're going to talk to Josh Devera from the Legion Discord about his turn 0 idea, which is he'll tell you what it is on the Discord, and then we're going to use that as a stepping off point to do our own little turn 0 discussion. So let's jump right into our interview with Josh.
And we're back with Peregrine from the Discord, also known as Joshua Devera, which, might be his real name or not. So Josh, how are you doing tonight?
Thanks, Zach. I'm doing great. And if I might say something, I just want to say thanks. I've heard people come on, and you guys do a lot for this community. And I really just want to say thank you to everyone in the Scoundrels, everyone in the 5th Trooper. I wouldn't be playing this game today the way I am, or even playing it at all, if there wasn't content creators like y'all out there. So thanks for having me on. It really is an honor to be here. And thanks from the community.
Oh, wow. We appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. Actually, this is a double dip for you. You joined me on the blog last week, and here you are on the podcast. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your local scene, and what are the games you played? I know you played X-Wing in the past, and then you kind of made the jump over to Legion.
Yeah, so I originally played X-Wing, kind of dipped my toes into 1.0, and then I spent a lot of time playing Destiny, and we all know how that panned out. But when Legion came out, I purchased a core set and dabbled in the painting and was really afraid of the painting. But probably around the time my first daughter was born, I really jumped in and started playing. I play in the Houston area, a lot of good players who I run into tournaments from time to time that have stomped me up and down. But my local scene is actually pretty casual. It's mostly just experimental type lists. No one likes to bring any of the super competitive lists. So I didn't really jump into the more competitive play actually until probably you and Mike Cirillo probably became my friends. After we started talking through the Legion Discord, which is how I was introduced to y'all through a mutual friend, Ed Martinez. That's really when my competitive career started to take off. And due to kids, due to work life, it's hard to continue to play those casual games, which is nice that we have this community that we can all join in through the Discord server. And that's where I actually get most of my games in, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we've played quite a bit of games recently, and it's a lot of fun that our schedules work out because of the kids. We know how that goes. And speaking of the Discord, that's actually the main reason we brought you on today, is because you started a new channel this week. For those that are on the Discord, you probably have seen it, and for those who aren't on the Discord, you should join it and come look at it because it's great. What is it, like workshop, we'll call it, and you named it Turn 0. So what is Turn Zero and how did you come up with it?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to I've only played in one, I guess you would say, competitive tournament. It was a Prime Championship back in December, and I went 2-1. My only loss was to the eventual winner of the tournament, Daniel Lupo. Pretty good local player. I'm sure you guys, everyone knows who Lupo is.
Yep.
And after the match, I remember one thing specifically, and it's all I could keep my mind on was the fact that I had thrown probably about, I would say, 20 to 25 dice at Sabine, and she just didn't die. And so after I lost, I just chalked it off to, oh, that was just bad variance. It was poor dice luck, and that's why I lost. And after thinking about it for a long period of time, and this was, to be honest, actually, I dwelled on it for a couple of weeks, and I started to think, maybe it wasn't the dice. Maybe I made some poor decisions. And I think a lot of times when we look at how the result of our game, we could say, oh, it was down to the last roll, or oh, it was down to I made this one decision, or they had better dice. Turns out I was playing against Tauntauns and Sabine, and I was blue player, and I chose battle lines over Long March. I was playing an ATST with Veers and Shores, and it seems kind of silly. Why did I choose Long March over battle lines? And in reality, the reason why I think I lost that match, not taking away from Daniel's skill, he's a great player. The setup was terrible, and I was going to lose from the beginning no matter what. And so I started to really put my mind into, it's kind of like if anyone's familiar with chaos theory, I don't want to get too deep into it, but tiny variances in the beginning, the initial variables, change the entire outcourse of the entire match. And that's what Turn Zero is. Turn Zero is all of the decisions we make before we start Turn One. That includes your list, that includes the battle deck, the choices you make in deployment, the choices you make on the side of the table you're on, and which cards you eliminate during the objective selection process.
And that's why I think your workshop on the Discord is actually really important. And Kyle made a joke the other day. He's like, oh, why didn't we think of this? Because it's a great idea. And the point that I'm trying to get at is that Turn Zero has so many little intricacies to them. It's kind of hard to to write it down or compartmentalize it. And you kind of found a way to do that through the channel by discussing what you think red player and blue player would do. And not to say that sometimes the Discord can get stale with conversation, but sometimes it can be a circle that we go around, right? And this is kind of like a breath of fresh air because it's something new, but it's also super useful to trying to learn the game in a different manner. And I think that some of the discussion last week was the first run of it. I thought it was like really, really good. And it's funny to see like a lot of different people's perspectives. I know that I had a lot of different perspectives than Kyle and Mike here on the podcast. Like they were thinking, I think what was it? Supply drop. I think Kyle liked supply drop for droids, let's say, right? Or and then like Mike didn't like supply drop. Just these are all examples for the droids in last week's workshop. And it's just fun to see all the different thought processes people have.
Yeah. So what Turn Zero is, and I actually came up with this after listening to y'all's podcast last week. Kyle was talking about recording his. I believe it was you, Kyle. Taking notes.
Yep.
Yeah. So taking notes to help you learn your list better, learn kind of the small intricacies. And so actually, I was mowing my lawn that morning, just trying to just dwelling upon that. And I decided that, if there was a way that I could pick everyone's brain in Turn Zero, because I don't think there's always a right choice, but I do think that there are certain play styles that need to approach Turn Zero differently. There are certain lists that need to approach Turn Zero differently. And so when I created the channel, it was more of a purpose for me to pick everyone else's brain to help to help me get a better understanding and broaden my knowledge on the game. So what Turn Zero is, there are 2 channels on the Discord, and it is the Legion Discord. I think you guys have a link through Legion HQ to find the Discord. There's not a good web address to find it, but I think you can find it through the Legion HQ.
Yeah, you totally can.
Perfect. And what it is I will have one person make a list, and then another person make a list. This past week, the 2 people making lists were Mike Cirillo with 5th Trooper, and then Richard O'Brien, also known as Codec, with the Legion University. And I display those lists, and I choose a map from Tabletop Simulator. And I'll give you 3 views on it. One that's an overhead view with a 6x6 blocked grid. So each of the grid covers the whole map, and it's all by 6 inches, which is range 1. And then I will give you about a 45-degree shot from the corner where blue major offensive would be, and then from red major offensive. And I'll post that in our images channel. And from there, the players have to decide, as blue player, whoever wins blue or has the lower bid, what to do. Do they keep blue? Do they pass it to the other player? And then they have to choose their map side. Once we kind of get a general idea of what the community, this is very community driven, because I don't really believe there's a right or a wrong answer in a lot of these scenarios. Sometimes there is. But once the community comes to kind of a consensus, then we move on to the next action, which I'll throw up the battle cards. And once the battle cards go up, then everyone decides what blue player does first. And this is where I think we spend most of our time, is once those battle cards come up, we don't know what's going to be up there. And so there's a lot of debate. And what surprised me the most was even some of the best players, who I would consider the best players in this game, had major disagreements. I think the biggest disagreement for our last one was between Luke, Zach, and Kyle. And Mike. It was, sorry, not you, Zach. It was Mike, Kyle, and Luke. And it was about what to do for the deployment. Mike, I think you thought key positions was fine for the objective, but I think Luke and Kyle didn't agree with that. And I'd consider you guys way better players than me. And I just found it interesting that we're able to pick y'all's brains and see that, there's many different ways to approach this. And it seemed like the more defensive players chose one path, and the more offensive-minded players chose a different path.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that exercise. I thought the Discord was really good, and it really shows you how even among different veteran players, you get very different viewpoints about what the correct course of action is. And I think you're right that our play styles kind of bore out in that discussion. I was, advocating basically for just, I think VAPS was in the 3rd slot, and I think I had advocated for just not overthinking it and pushing for VAPS. Because I'm a very defensive player and that's my play style. And Mike was basically advocating, I think, for you, the deployments were more important, Mike, in that last exercise.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of felt like one of the lists included R2, I believe.
Yep.
And I feel like controlling the lanes in which R2 can make his way to the objective zone is a really big deal. More so a lot of times than the objective you pick. Like, you don't want, specifically if you're a red player, I think in this circumstance, blue player had R2 and red player did not. The objective almost doesn't matter. The objectives were pretty vanilla, if I recall correctly. It was might have been like KP, intercept, and sabotage or something like that. And so a lot of those end on ties, or R2 is R2 is super good on KP. He's super good on intercept. He's super good on sabotage. And I felt like you could be playing any of those objectives, and R2 just matters a lot more than the actual objective you're playing.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things that I think comes into it is personal experience too. I think I advocated for passing initially, and that's because even though I often play blue and I have VAPs in almost every single one of my decks, I'm terrible at it. I just never play VAPs well because I think about them too late. Um, and so it was interesting to see how other people approach that particular objective. Where I think I was more in line with you, Mike, that I didn't want R2 scoring, so I would have gone for a better deployment, which in this case I think it was Danger Close was the deployment that I wanted.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point about there not being like a hard and fast right or wrong answer. I think, we talk a lot on this podcast about, what the right thing to do is in a lot of situations. And what we don't talk about a ton is personal play styles and what, like, once people are good at the game, what they're good at, you know. Kyle, David, and Zach and I all have like very different ways that we play this game, and Josh, I'm sure you do too. Like, if you were to compare me and Kyle, like, I'm very aggressive and Kyle is very defensive. Our strategies are almost counterintuitive, and so he likes sabotage, and I'm like, okay, sabotage, let's go. I'm gonna play as red player and kill your units. Like, I'm excited for this, and I don't know. I think that knowing how you play the game specifically, and this turn zero kind of experiment that we went through last week really illuminated that for me. Is like, I play this game very differently than other people, and that's okay. And I think it actually, in some circumstances, works better for me. It certainly works better for those other people when they're doing their thing. I think a lot of it comes down to play style.
Yeah, that takes me down memory lane with your unpainted boss getting Kyle back for taking blue Vaps at Huzzah Games, which feels like 35 million years ago. But I remember. But yeah, it definitely shows different play styles. It's funny. I've played Josh. I played you probably almost like 10 times by now. I actually don't even know what I would call your play style. I think you're like a good mix between aggressive and defensive, but I think
It's winning.
yeah, it's winning. That's the Dash's way, right? As I see him laughing and cackling on mute, he got a good kick out of that one. But yeah, your play style changes from game to game. It depends on the list you bring. I would say that in this exercise you went more aggressive and thought danger close, etc. But that's good to have that variation in your game too. Like, you don't have to always be aggressive or be defensive. And again, it just, your play style can vary. So what is your, what is the future of Turn Zero, and do you see it just staying the way it is? Do you have any ideas of where it can go? What are your plans for Turn Zero?
Well, so ultimately, my goal with it is to kind of help the community improve your play style, or not play style, improve your game. I think too often things are just kind of, oh, well, that was a better list, or that was a bad matchup, or the dice were poor. But my ultimate goal is to help everyone think through Turn Zero in a different way, and to be able to reflect on it to improve their competitive play if that's what they're wanting. But there's been a few ideas that have been kicked around. I think the first thing that I'm going to do from here is kind of just write some sum me up articles, just put kind of the major thought processes behind each action that the community chose, and put it onto paper. As fun as it is to read through everything as it's happening, it's not really fun to go back from the beginning and try to figure out everything, because it's just a lot of messaging. And I think even though Discord is fairly easy to use, unlike some other podcasts that rhyme with Stab Blast, think Discord is impossible to use. It's a lot of information. So the first thing I'm going to do is probably put it on paper for people to read.
So you heard it here first. This is a psych test more than anything.
Yeah. The next thing that I'm probably going to do, and this is funny, a lot of people want to see the matches played out. And I don't ever think that I will go that route, because I think it eliminates a lot of people's thought process or what they put into it. For example, if let's say red player wins and someone else's decision went into or wasn't chosen, they're going to think that, well, it's because they didn't choose my answer. But if we play it out, there's a lot of other variables that go into a game. Maybe it was the dice. Maybe it was the level of players that were playing the list. So I don't really want to go the route of seeing how putting it into practice or putting it into play. The purpose is to kind of see everyone's opinions. What I would like to see eventually is kind of a roundtable discussion, kind of like for those of you that watch ESPN, kind of like around the horn. And this is actually something that Mike Cyril and I talked about quite frequently, but we were never able to put it into action, was kind of have 4 heads on the screen. We'll throw up the battle cards, and then everyone discusses what they think should happen, and you get points for whoever makes the better discussion, or you lose points if you're not making a very good discussion, type of thing. And just to make fun, to have fun with it, and also to help the community. Again, because I don't think there is really a right answer. I think the way that this has gone, it's who's made the better argument, and that's how I've pushed everyone's action along.
Well, I'll say this: if you do the around the horn thing, if you don't pull a Tony Reale and try and throw a paper ball into the trash can afterwards, it's null and void. So I'm just letting you know.
All right, make sure I have a trash can standing by.
There was one request, and I hope that Tim Hannon is listening to this, because this request was from Josh. He said, if I come on this podcast, can I trash talk the Stabcast? I said, absolutely. That is 100% a thing you can do. So speaking of the Stabcast, what do you have to say to them?
So we actually are offering a class. See, what does this come out Tuesday? So the general public will have missed it, but I made an announcement directly to the Stabcast individuals. I realize that the age of the internet is here, and it can be scary, and it can be very overwhelming getting onto Discord. But I just want you to know we're here for you. I am an admin on the Legion Discord. At any time, you can message me, and I can show you how to navigate each channel. I can show you how to scroll up on your mouse to read the messages. I can show you how to answer when you've been tagged or quoted, and how to find those. And we're here for you. We're here to help build this community. And if you have trouble with Discord, I can show you how to use it.
Sorry to catch my breath there, is laughing pretty hard. So you heard it here first. Peregrine, Josh Devera, is not only going to help you learn about Turn Zero, he's going to hold your hand learning the Discord. Tim Hannon, Ben Fowler, let's see, William Heim. I'm trying to remember everyone's name. Ryan Slowowski, I probably just butchered it. The only one that doesn't need to learn is Brett Renko. He is the enemy of the podcast, but he's our friend. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But Josh, I just want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for talking about Turn Zero, and I look forward to seeing where it takes us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on, and hope to see all of you guys on the Discord soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.
So that was Josh Devera, aka Peregrine, from the Legion Discord. I gotta say, as soon as I saw that he had set that thing up on that Discord, I thought that was a fabulous idea.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of crystallizes the stuff that we talk about behind the scenes all the time. I feel like we talk a lot about tactics and strategy, kind of just in our daily discussions, and what's good and what's bad, and how we made a mistake and how we didn't make a mistake. And I think it really kind of like puts like pen to paper as to some of the things that we talk about on a daily basis.
Yeah, and turn zero is such an important part of the game. It literally like sets the stage for the entire game, and really like small nuances in turn zero and advantages for you versus advantages for your opponent can really like become magnified over the course of the game in those very like nuanced and specific turn zero decisions.
Yeah, I mean, not to get like super hyperbolic, but I do think that there is a non-zero um, amount of games that like you actually don't need to play after turn zero. Like turn zero just decides the game, and you don't need to play it. I mean, like clearly you're going to because you're in a competitive environment and you're there to play Legion and you're doing those things. But like some games, if you don't know what you're doing, can just be decided at the outset because you got a bad deal or dealt with turn zero poorly.
Yeah, and I think that was more true back in like the old days of key positions. The OG version of key positions, where blue player got to pick two of the objectives. But I mean, I think that can still be true. I think more generally now, it's that we talk a lot about the concept of beatdown versus control player, and like what I think of when I think of those terms is that the control player is the one for whom the status quo is okay. Like if there's no interventions by either player and both players do basically more or less what's expected, they're the ones that are going to win, and then the beatdown is the one that has to change that status quo. I feel like turn zero usually establishes who the control player is and who the beatdown player is.
Yeah, totally. And I think that the biggest thing coming out of turn zero is whether or not you recognize which one of those things you are. Um, because if you go through turn zero and you're like, oh, I'm the control player, but turn zero really meant that you're the beatdown player, and you don't properly like see that decision point and make the correct decision, like the game just goes very poorly for you. For instance, like a very easy example is your blue player, you ban to sabotage the moisture evaporators, and then you attack your opponent aggressively, right? Like that's not your role in that game. Your role is to sit back and let them come to you so that you don't have to move shoot. You're aim shooting while they are moving and shooting. And um and just like situations like that, if you don't recognize which one of those things you are, it can be crippling.
Yeah, and that's an interesting example. I think for the most part, like there are some lists that still want to go into attack mode even on sabotage, like tauntauns, or if you're running something weird like flame RTs, you know. Like there are some lists that just don't play that well defensively. But I think you're also
Yeah,
probably not taking sabotage if you run a list like that.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is like if you want to be playing aggressively and to sabotage the moisture evaporators, it's probably not in your battle deck, right?
Right.
Or rather, it shouldn't be in your battle deck.
Correct. Like if you're a blue player, I mean, if you have to build a battle tech, right? And if you're putting sabotage in there, that means in theory you should have a list that's designed to play sabotage defensively.
In theory, yeah. I was gonna say I half agree with that now. I mean, we did talk a few shows ago about how red is starting to become more adept at playing sabotage by immediately going into attack mode and trying to eliminate a unit and just sort of flip the script on the blue player. But I mean, you can actually include that as part of your strategy, even as blue. And just say, well, I have a plan to attack that third evaporator, if needs must, because it is getting harder and harder to guarantee the safety of all your units, generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean silhouettes are a big part of that, and I think that yeah, you're right. I mean, like if you like to, and that's the other thing, and we talked about that a little bit with Josh, in like personal play styles, right? Like if you just like playing aggressively on Sabotage the Moisture Evaporators, and that's like a thing that you enjoy and that you're good at, like go for it, right?
Right.
But I think conventional wisdom is certainly, if you're taking Sabotage, you want to be blue player, you want to be kind of controlling, right?
Right. The incentive is then on your opponent to attack into you, which is generally favorable. So that's like the foundational wisdom behind this, right? That we're going into it with.
Well, I would say, based, think about turn 0 and talking about VAPs. The biggest advice that I can give to you in this exact situation, right? If aren't sure if you can play aggressive or defensive, right? The biggest advice I can give you is learn where to place your VAPs in a position that works best for your list or how you play the game. Like, I think placing VAPs is one of the most important skills. I'll put that in quotations. One of the, like, it is so important to know where to put your VAPs in every time you play a SABS game. Like, if you put a VAP in a vulnerable spot, but you don't see it on turn 0, and then next thing you know, you're double moving or you're moving to your VAP to tap it, and you realize you've exposed a unit to your opponent, and it was strictly based on because of bad VAP placement, it can really fall apart quickly. And that's why learning where to place those VAPs is so important to playing your game.
Exactly. And I just want to say, also, is as blue player, you have the burden of making the first drop. So you have to put that first drop in a place that's going to occlude red's second drop. And if blue doesn't move to occlude a safe spot, then red has the burden of trying to find a way to force that evaporator out and expose it. Now, you can do this more easily on certain deployments. Like, for example, battle lines, I think, is one of the more notorious, let me borrow that word, deployments for this, where you can force evaporator position onto your opponent because the field kind of gets short, so to speak, and evaporators have that range 2 bubble, right? So you have to be able to know that really is a skill, being able to read the board and saying, if I put this here, my opponent, I'm going to not only get a good spot for my evaporator, I'll also deny my opponent a safe place to put his or hers. But you see what I mean?
I agree, and I think to kind of draw this discussion more into turn 0 as opposed to evaporators, I think it's very important that when you build your battle deck and when you're in the band phase, you are conceptualizing like driving home an objective. Like, I'm just going to ban to Sabotage may not be good, because your opponent can then also pick a deployment that may not be actually preferential for it. If your opponent bans to Hemmed In and you've banned to Sabotage, Sabotage and Mush Evaporators is not a good objective on Hemmed In for the most part. It turns into a bloodbath very quickly, and you lose a lot of the advantage you would have as blue player if you're playing Hemmed In alongside Sabotage. And so when we talk about turn 0 and kind of the process that goes through it, it's more than just, hey, Sabotage is good for blue player. Like, that's, we all know that. It's really about, hey, diagnosing the fact that Sabotage might not actually be good in this situation, because my opponent is going to ban to Hemmed In, or my opponent is going to banned to roll out, and I don't actually have any places to put evaporators on the rollout deployment where I can hide behind things, and a savvy opponent will kind of manipulate this. And I think a really good showcase of this was the Garn versus Luke Cook match in the Invader League's semifinals, where Garn banned to Bombing Run. He was playing a CIS Stap list. He was like, "Great, I'm playing Bombing Run. This is fantastic." And Luke said, "Okay, well, I'm going to ban to Hemmed In, and I'm just gonna, and like, you're going over towards the other deployment zone. I'm gonna march towards yours," and it ended up being very favorable for him. In a situation where it normally would have been favorable for the CIS player if it had been any other deployment.
Yeah.
So there's weird things like that happen during turn 0 that you have to recognize.
Right, like Garn bans to Bombing Run, but then Luke bans to Hemden, and he has Secret Mission on Hemden, which is like an easy dunk for Secret Mission lists, generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I remember because we were, I didn't get to watch the full game, but somebody told me they're like Garn got Bombing Run hemmed in, and I was like, whoa, like that's so good for his list. And then in the post interview, they were talking and they're like, how did you guys end up in your turn 0 deployment? And Luke was like, well, I banned a hemmed in because it was just really good for me because of the terrain. And like it's interesting because normally Bombing Run hemmed in is fantastic. Both of those cards are fantastic for Garn. But the fact of the matter was the terrain on the board, on that specific board, made hemmed in incredible for Luke. So he was like, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, there was actually like a decent sized line of sight blocking building on what ended up being like the left side of the blue hemmed in deployment zone, where like a little corner, like a 1.5 inch corner of the deployment zone stuck out on the other side, on the far side of that line of sight blocking building that was like perfectly R2 sized.
And not
Basically.
only that, on the way to that little notch was a ring of heavy cover plant dividers.
Yeah.
And so he stood his whole army inside this ring of heavy cover while R2 was heading to this notch. And so like Luke just completely aced the deployment phase.
Yeah, and the terrain is on any given board is such a huge wild card with turn 0. We're talking about banning cards right now, but choosing your side is actually the first thing you do before you even throw battle cards out, and it's super important. We could make like a whole separate episode about assessing a table and deciding which side is better. And at a real life tournament, you only have like 5 minutes or less to do that assessment. And you have to be able to kind of eyeball a table and figure out which side you want. Obviously you need to know which deployment zones you have in your deck, right? Like, for example, when I run Separatists, I tend to run like gunline style Separatists heavy on B1s with Dooku. So I like deployments that make you fight long ways, like Long March and Rollout, because I don't want to have to deal with tauntauns and staps and speeder bikes and other stuff running around my flanks. And I feel like it's easier to maintain the coordinate chain that way. But that's a huge factor in determining table side, because if I'm blue player, I know that most of the deployments in my deck involve fighting basically from right to left on the side that I pick, not from back to front, essentially. So that's like a huge factor when looking at a table and the terrain, is knowing which deployments you have.
Yeah, and this is why I love this exercise that Josh came up with, because the more and more we talk, the more and more you realize how many variables go into this. And we've had people ask us to do a straight up turn 0 episode. And now this is basically back-to-back episodes we're doing turn 0, right? But there is so many possibilities in this game. We're not going to be able to hit all of them. So to be able to have a discussion to pick apart everyone's brain and talk it out and think it through, it is so good for the community to have that, because you can listen to us talk about this all the time, right? Like, this is what we do. This is the podcast. We're going to talk competitive, right? But it's hard to kind of apply that. You can listen and you on your drive or wherever you listen to, right? And you can see it in your mind. But to be able to see the pictures and to type it out and to discuss it with people is so key to actually learning the intricacies of turn 0, I think.
Yeah, and I think that turn 0 is a skill you have to train. It's like, a quarterback learning how to read how the defense is coming in on them in a football game, and they have to make a kind of a split decision, a split second decision at the beginning of every play, whether to go to their alternate play or do whatever. Similarly, turn 0, it's not something that's hard and fast. There are hard and fast rules that we talk about a lot, but it's probably the hardest skill in Legion, frankly, is identifying the correct decisions during turn 0 and the correct decisions for you.
Yeah, I mean there are two like super common new player mistakes that I made when I was a new player, and that I also see lots of new players make, and I would say these are probably the two most common. The first is just being too aggressive and not measuring threat ranges accordingly. And the second is just kind of being sloppy or quick with turn zero. Um, it's worth. I don't want to say you want to take like 10 minutes doing turn zero, but it's worth taking the time when you're considering, your table side, when you're considering your bans, because it sets the tone for the whole game, and it's going to decide like who starts the game in control, basically. And ideally you want that player to be you, depending on what type of list you have. So it's super important, and it definitely takes a lot of reps and practice to to get the hang of. And I think, I mean, no matter how much experience you have, you still make turn zero mistakes. I made an atrocious one in my game against Luke. What was that, 2 weeks ago now? But you know, like you can always learn, and it just takes, it's just reps. You just need practice as much as you can manage.
Yeah, and I think Josh gave good advice, and Kyle, you gave it last week, is trying to keep notes of these things. Um, Turn zero mistakes are like the ones, that haunt you the most. I think when you start thinking about things like Josh said in his interview, like you always might think it's dice or something, but a lot of the times you can go back to turn zero. Like if I did this differently, maybe the game's different. It's just so important to the game.
You guys got any other turn zero thoughts, or should we move on to Invader updates?
Mike had a pretty good turn zero.
Mike did have a pretty good turn zero.
And a pretty good turn one.
Actually,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I thought turn zero was pretty samey for the most part.
So
But why don't we actually talk about it instead of alluding to it?
yeah, okay. So both semifinal games were played last week. Let's start first with just Luke Cook versus Garn. We already talked about it a little bit. Luke Cook was playing the quote unquote Rex Star list, which is the whole 5 phase 2s, 1 phase 1, R2 Rex, 3 arcs, basically. Exactly 800 points. There's no less than 5 copies of that exact list in elims. Luke was and is the last remaining one. He defeated Garnanina, who was playing Separatists, the Grievous, and Staps. Garn made a great show of it, but ultimately Secret Mission won the day. This is the short version of that game.
Yeah, it was very close, frankly.
It was
a
extremely
lot
close.
closer than it looked like it was going to be in the opening turns.
Yeah, so actually I want to talk about this game a little bit real quick, because it was kind of like a nice little like exhibition by Garn on how to handle standby sharing and a standby clone ball. Because we talk a lot about threat saturation, and basically what he did, and the primary way to crack a clone ball is you have to stall and hide with most of your activations until you can get inside range 3 with all or most of them. And then if you have a focus piece like Grievous, which he does, you put them in a position to slam in there as like the first activation in a turn and draw all the attention, while the rest of your units, which should now be within range 3 of the entire clone force, can move in there and start shooting units while your opponent focuses on that high threat unit that's in their grill. And that's exactly what he did. I think it was turn 4.
Yeah,
where he
it
basically
was. I think it was one turn too late.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what
Yeah,
happened.
essentially he slammed Grievous into the clone ball, did the trained in your Jedi arts thing. He actually didn't kill that much with it, but he threw down a lot of suppression. He forced Rex to go early, which was important for that turn. And Grievous was reasonably healthy when he did that, so he forced basically the entire clone army to shoot at him, and then he was able to use that opening to move up with his Staps and his B1s and start taking shots at clones. And he was actually in a favorable spot as far as attrition is concerned and units killed at the end of that turn. But critically, he did not kill R2, and R2 had a bomb. So R2 both delivered the bomb and then also scored Secret Mission. And behind that building we talked about earlier, and Luke ended up winning 4-3. But it was a great example of like what to actually do to crack a clone ball, because he essentially did that. He just couldn't kill R2.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you've got the time, I highly recommend watching it because it, I know Standby Sharian's kind of like the monster in the room, if you will, at the moment, but there are ways to play around it, um, and deal with it. They might not be great, but there are effective tactics to do that, that do work. They don't work all the time,
Yeah,
but they do work.
and he did a good job using terrain on the map too. There were these two big line of sight blocking statues, kind of like right in the middle of the map that he, they kind of toilet bowled around, and some nice long walls too in various places. So, um, clones have a lot of aim tokens and a lot of firepower, but they can't use them if they can't see you. So, yeah, Garn did a great job of hiding and maneuvering. So Mike, you played Kingsley. It was the Arcstar versus Arcstar mirror. Do you want to briefly? I don't know if you've ever like fully talked about your list yet on the cast.
Really? It's possible I haven't. I don't know. Everything blurs together.
I mean, you wrote an article about it on the blog, but
I did. So there's an article on the blog. I think it's called "Victory or Death," and basically my list is the Rexstar list that Kyle just talked about that Luke was playing, except instead of 5 phase 2s, you've got 3 phase 2s and 2 full arc squads, and you've got a couple phase 1s to bring up the rear to feed them standbys. And there's a few things that are, I think it's unclear at this point which list is better. I certainly am in camp Arcstar, but we'll see how the finals go. But basically, the advantages I see in this list over the traditional Rexstar is that you don't have to choose between offensive push and Overwatch. You just have 5 Overwatch units because full arcs have tactical natively. So your offensive push squads for Take That Clankers already have offensive push, so you don't need to give it to them, which does a few things. It makes it so that your units are less specialized and more generally accepting of kind of abusing the standby token mechanic, sharing mechanic, in that in a traditional Rexstar list, you've only got 3 units that can actually stand by at range 3, whereas in the Arcstar list, you've got 5. And when people start picking apart your standby units in a Rexstar list, sometimes things can get a little bit hairy and your shields can come down. It's a lot harder to do that against an Arcstar list because you've got to kill basically the entire clone army in order to get rid of that range 3 band. That's a very long-winded way of saying that's what I'm playing. And Kingsley and I were basically playing the exact same, not the exact same list, but very similar lists in our semifinals game. So yeah,
it's worth mentioning too. These were the only 2 out of 64 Arcstar lists in the entirety of Eloms. The Rexstar, which is Luke's version of the list that has phase 2s and then arc strike teams instead of full arcs, was far more popular among clone players. But both 2 out of 2 Arcstar lists made it to the top 4, and one eliminated the other. So that's interesting just from a data perspective. But yeah, do you want to talk real quick about your game with Kingsley?
Yeah, I mean, it was, a lot of people going into the game were, David, you casted it, were thinking that it was kind of going to be like a standoff. It ended up being pretty aggressive and pretty bloody. And at least I thought it was. And I don't know. I think a few things happened that really decided the game. Kingsley back cohered his full arc squad so that he, instead of cohering his phase 1s, his naked squads towards the arcs, he kind of cohered his arcs towards the units that were going to be sharing the tokens. And what that ended up doing was allowing me to take pot shots at a single dude in a full arc squad. And so basically the first turn was me scoping like like a dude out of each of his full arc squads. And I kind of went into this game with the premise being that the full arcs are the units that really matter in this matchup. And if you can deteriorate your opponents without losing your own, whoever was able to do that better was likely to come out on top. And so what ended up happening was I was basically able to kill a full arc squad. I think at the top of turn 2, I had 2 full arc squads and he had 1. And I don't think his full arc was even full. I think it had 4 models in it. And at that point, I think the game just kind of snowballed. His dice also sort of betrayed him. His defense dice weren't great. It was a lot less about the objective. We were playing intercept the transmissions, hemmed in. We both had R2. I think due to my early success, I was likely to just kind of continue. Once a clone list starts beating you up, it's difficult to come back because it's hard to get into this through the standbys, right? Like you just continue to get beat up a little bit. So I think top of 4 he ended up conceding, and that was kind of how it went. I guess
the game kind of became about this field where there was a planter, right, that was only granting light cover. And so there was a moment where there was like a full arc trooper on the corner of this building that had vision across this field of light cover. And arcs, they're some of the best units to funnel standbys to because they replicate sharpshooter, critical. They replicate all their good keywords every time they get a standby fed to them. And if you only have light cover, it's no protection at all. So if you even want to contest middle, you're basically saying every time you move a unit to the middle, I will shoot you for free because I'm feeding a standby to this guy who's in the exact right spot to get the standby. And I mean, at that point, it was sort of like I'm down on units and I have very little that can influence a battlefield where I cannot access the standbys because I don't control enough angles, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because it was a weekend game during the afternoon and I've got a kid. So I really was like watching, but I was like more or less listening. But if I'm not mistaken, Mike, you played Take That Clankers round 1 and Kingsley did not, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I do think that was a pretty... that decided what my turn 1 looked like pretty hard. So what I ended up doing now, knowing that he did not play Take That Clankers on turn 1, was I actually threw a phase 2 unit out to basically scope one of his arc models, and I put it in a position where it wasn't in range 3 of any of his stuff unless he could shoot it. And my thought process there was, well, all of his stuff is range 3 this turn. If he wants to move his stuff forward so that it's range 3 of my phase 2 unit, he's just going to put it in range of my full arcs, and they're just going to eat whatever takes that bait. And I think I had a pretty big advantage there. And at the end of that turn, basically he was down a phase 2 squad and a full arc squad due to kind of how that played out. And I similarly, like, I lost my bait squad. Like, I put it out there, it died. I kind of accepted that it was going to die at the beginning of that turn when I made that move. But the other thing was that it was pretty safe because if he doesn't take the bait, he also doesn't kill the unit. So I do think that hurt him there. I think that he probably... The other thing was that because of how he deployed, he had a lot of units that were not line of sight blocked, and I was probably going to be able to shoot something with Take That Clankers.
Yeah,
whereas,
yeah, go ahead.
Well,
I was going to say, knowing that he can't extend his range also allowed you to get yourself into positions to take those shots and to take advantage of those models not behind line of sight, because you were like, well, I can move this arc unit over here, rip this shot, and I know he can't hit me back because he didn't play Take That Clankers, which was, I mean, it was big for your strategy, which was to attack his arcs and to then leverage your arcs in the battle, I think.
Yeah, and I think it doubly, made a very big difference because standby sharing is clearly range 3 in my list and his list, but he has to engage me at range 3 that turn if he's going to engage, right? Whereas I don't, and his standbys didn't matter that turn, and mine did, and that ended up being a very big deal, because he ended up he decided to walk out into a standby, and I ate half of a full arc squad, with a Z6 shot, and I think it might have, I think it was just the unit leader in a Z6 into heavy cover, and I had like 6 aim tokens, and I was like, all right, well, I roll 7 hits because 6 aim tokens is really good, and he just lost half his full arc before they got to shoot.
I mean, it's not just 6 aims; it's also 6 aims on black with surge and sharpshooter.
Yeah, I mean, like
with lethal.
Yeah, the difference between like a clone Z6 unit that surges to hit and like a Rebel Z6 unit, damage wise, is pretty big. Like
They're different
aim
guns.
tokens aside,
They're literally different guns, and they're
Yeah,
also
the search tokens from reliable are significant.
very significant. Yeah.
And that was another thing that ended up being very influential in that first turn was I didn't really need to spend surge tokens on defense. So I could kind of just unload all my tokens because he couldn't get to me, whereas he had to spend his tokens defensively.
Right, I was going to say by comparison, his clankers back to their way had suffered intensely from that initial barrage because, when he was trying to clanker you back, what was left to do it with? Like one arc and then what?
Yeah, I think he actually gave his orders to Rex and a full arc unit with 4 models in it, and Rex didn't even shoot that turn. And I mean, I think he was hurting for sure.
He was taken aback a little bit because of the counterintuitive way the match played out. Because you try to shoot pierce shots at things that are not impervious, because there's a chance the kill goes to waste. But in that particular matchup, the script was flipped, where whoever's arcs degraded faster lost, essentially.
Yeah, the way I feel about that matchup is that the full arcs are just like they kill the phase 2 so quickly in comparison to other things that like whoever's full arcs live the longest is gonna win.
Right.
And it's also worth noting that once you lose 1 or 2 models in a full arc squad, it gets a lot worse. Like I'm not saying it's bad by any means, but each die you die, or 2 dice if you're at range 2 out of that pool that you lose, is a really big deal, and you do not want to be losing models out of that squad at all, if at all possible.
Yeah, it's not nearly as like backloaded, quote unquote, as a normal squad with a heavy upgrade is, because the heavy only has 2 dice. Now the heavy's bringing lethal and critical, right? But it's kind of like a death trooper unit where every dude that you lose is a reliable dice that's in your pool. So
yeah, it's a big deal. Their effectiveness goes down dramatically as you lose models. It's definitely not that's one of the benefits of the Z6s, in that like you don't lose most of your damage until you lose the heavy, right?
Yep. Well, so when's the final versus you and Luke? You versus Luke.
It is sometime Friday. We have not nailed down a time yet. It is likely going to be midday, probably somewhere in the realm of like noon to 3, I think, by the way we were talking. So that, around then, hopefully we'll have a timeout probably sometime tomorrow.
Awesome. I'm super excited.
Yeah, me too. This is the first finals of Invader League I've been in, so I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think a first-time champion on either side, right? Luke hasn't won, and Mike, you've like you said, first final, so we're gonna have a new champion. Yeah, and I think Ty is gonna take that game on turn 6 crits. David, I'm hoping you can join him. I know we've been trying to figure this out today, and I think Dark will join too. We'll have a 3-man booth, but we'll hammer out those details as the week goes on and get everyone everything they need to be able to watch the game.
Awesome. It's hopefully if you're playing in the afternoon, hopefully it's while my kids are napping so I can actually watch it.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. I mean, schedule on your own schedule, not on mine. But yeah, super excited. That'll be sometime on Friday, and good luck.
Thanks, man. I'm looking forward to it. It will be a fun game, I think, no matter what. So
Yeah, this finals maps looks pretty wild. So
yeah, I think it's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be like not Solist, wherever Vader's from. Mustafar is Mustafar where his castle.
Mustafa.
Yeah.
Mustafar, yeah.
I also, just as a minor tangent, I think it's really sick and incredibly cool that Vader decided to put his castle where he basically like murdered like 40 people.
Well, and also where he almost got murdered by Obi-Wan.
That's also true.
I mean,
you know,
he was murdered by Obi-Wan. He's not Anakin anymore. He's Vader. So
That's-
he is literally going back to the place where he died and then was taken back by the Force and Palpatine to be Vader. So, it's definitely sick and twisted, Mike. I guess that's why you like it. I don't know.
just to be
He
clear,
wasn't murdered. He was alive.
I know.
Not
Well,
only-
you know what I mean, though. Like his Anakin Skywalker was murdered, and Darth Vader was risen from those from whatever was left.
hang on.
hard disagree.
Also hard to say.
Canonically,
Rules is written. He didn't die. So
well, let's assume that Zach is right, and he did die at Mustafar and was reborn from the ashes. He was Darth Vader before he died.
Yeah, he was Darth Vader the moment he cut off Mace Windu's hands, basically.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
if you want to get really technical, he was Darth Vader when he like screamed out "I hate you" and his eyes went all like Sithy.
Also fair. All right, he was Vader. He was Vader for a long time, but I'm just saying that wasn't he physically became Vader. All right, you guys, all right, you dunked on me. It's fine.
He put on those yellow contacts with his one remaining arm.
Anyways, the Invader League map looks super cool. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Thank you, Ellis, for putting it together. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah.
All right. Well, let's you guys got anything else to plug? Nope. All right.
Watch Gen Con next week, please.
Yeah, there you go. It'll be not this weekend, but next weekend. So we had Josh Devera on. Thank you to Josh for coming on. We are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm David.
I'm Zach.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.